born to be exhausted. From the moment a royal child was born into the pharaonic line, their life was dictated by gods, omens, and court intrigue. Heirs were groomed to rule from a young age, forced into a regime of strict ritual training, military drilling, theological education, and political conditioning. Every movement was watched. Tutors and priests drilled them not only in literacy and law, but in the rituals of statecraft, the mythology of the gods, and the traditions of Maat. Even before adolescence, royal children attended ceremonies, parroted divine titles, and were judged for their composure in sacred spaces. Pharaohs were considered semi-divine, incarnations of Horus on earth and Osiris in death. This meant they were never treated as normal people, even as children. Loneliness was inevitable. Friends were few. Most people they interacted with were servants, tutors, or spies for other factions of the royal family. Rival heirs could be eliminated by jealous queens or ambitious priests. Succession was rarely peaceful. Pharaohs grew up watching their own family torn apart by ambition. Often, siblings were quietly imprisoned or vanished mysteriously, and mothers fought fiercely to secure power for their sons. It wasn't childhood, it was a daily rehearsal for rulership and survival. The burden of divinity, the pharaoh, was the physical embodiment of Maat cosmic order. If the Nile didn't flood, or if locusts devoured crops, it was his fault. If disease spread, the people believed the pharaoh had angered the gods. This wasn't metaphorical. The weight of national survival literally rested on his shoulders. His appearance, health, and demeanor were public matters. If he appeared weak, it was a sign that the gods were withdrawing favor. Panic could erupt in temples, cities, or distant provinces. Every day began with exhausting rituals. Before sunrise, the pharaoh was ritually bathed, perfumed, robed, and adorned with sacred jewelry. Then came offerings to multiple gods in various temples, incense burning, animal sacrifices, and sacred chants that could last for hours. Sometimes these rituals were carried out in proxy, but often the pharaoh's physical presence was expected. He couldn't sneeze without it becoming a divine omen. He couldn't make mistakes in public. Every gesture, word, and decision was documented and judged by scribes, priests, and celestial deities alike. And while he ruled the land, he was also shackled by divine rules. He had to marry within the royal family, sometimes his own sisters or daughters, to preserve divine bloodlines. He could not grow old in peace. Every wrinkle, every illness was interpreted as a weakening of divine authority. Aging was a political liability. It meant the gods were growing impatient, or that the people might begin to consider succession. Isolation and paranoia in the palace. The pharaoh lived surrounded by opulence, but also by isolation. Every servant could be a spy. Every official might be plotting to replace him. Poison was a daily fear. Assassination attempts were a part of life. The royal harem wasn't just a symbol of pleasure, it was a battlefield of influence. Queens vied for their sons to be named heir. Servants passed messages between factions. Intrigue brewed in every corner. The palace was a place of luxury and dread. Ministers whispered behind curtains. Scribes concealed intelligence in scrolls. The pharaoh might have thousands of courtiers, but very few confidants. Even once food was suspect tasters were common, and sudden illness could mean treachery. Trust was rare. Even viziers, supposedly the most loyal officials, were sometimes found guilty of treason. One wrong decision could lead to being overthrown and having one's name erased from history. In a society where memory was tied to afterlife survival, erasure was a fate worse than death. Wars, wounds, and diplomacy, contrary to popular belief, pharaohs didn't just issue orders from golden thrones. Many led military campaigns personally. Thutmose III, Ramesses II, and others marched into battle, risking death. They were expected to be warriors, not just priests. They led from chariots, rode into chaos, and suffered wounds and exhaustion. Arrow wounds, bone fractures, and infections were common among royal mummies, evidence of real risk. Campaigns were physically brutal. Heat stroke, dehydration, ambushes, and desert treks plagued pharaohs and their armies. Battlefields were not just dangerous, they were disorganized and traumatic. The pressure to return victorious was immense, as defeat could destabilize the entire empire. Even when not at war, diplomacy was grueling. They had to negotiate marriages, peace treaties, and trade routes, often with manipulative foreign powers. Letters from foreign rulers could be dismissive, petty, or threatening. Gifts were demanded. Prestige had to be maintained. One weak moment, and enemies like the Hittites or Nubians would pounce. The endless rituals of Pharaoh's schedule was dictated by temple calendars. Festivals, offerings, processions, funerals, and purification ceremonies filled every month. There were over 200 annual temple events in some reigns, many requiring personal appearance or royal sanction. He had to participate in or oversee offerings to hundreds of gods. If he failed to perform these duties, it could be interpreted as neglecting the divine order with disastrous consequences. Priests would record omens. Rivals would whisper of divine displeasure. Temple priests held immense power. Some dynasties saw religious institutions rival the pharaoh's authority. To keep their loyalty, he had to constantly donate land, labor, and treasure-draining royal resources. Temples controlled vast estates, herds, and workshops. In many ways, the pharaoh became a hostage to the gods he served. Even leisure was formal. Attending festivals like the Opet or Sed festival required days of preparation and hours of ceremonial movement. Music, dancing, and food were strictly orchestrated, leaving little room for spontaneity or joy. The building obsession. Pharaohs were obsessed with legacy, and legacy meant monuments. Temples, pyramids, tombs, statues all had to outshrine their predecessors. To not build was to risk being forgotten. This meant a constant drain on the economy. Farmers and laborers were conscripted. The treasury was emptied. Mistakes in design or construction could mean divine punishment. Architects and workers faced execution if the pharaoh's vision was not realized. The pressure of building one's own tomb began early in life. It was said that the pharaoh's true house was his tomb. He had to plan every detail from the art to the alignment of the stars. Burial chambers, passages, vaults doors, and inscriptions were meticulously designed. Any flaw might doom his soul. Failures weren't just physical. If his successor was ungrateful or his dynasty collapsed, his monuments could be defaced or reused. Statues of lesser-known pharaohs have been found with faces chiseled off, names recarved, and tombs emptied for later use. Death wasn't an escape. Even in death, the pharaoh's burden continued. He had to undergo complex mummification rituals. His heart was weighed against a feather to determine his worth. The Book of the Dead contained spells he had to memorize or have inscribed in his tomb. Every amulet, carving, and color in his burial gear had meaning. Mistakes could mean spiritual annihilation. Tombs were vulnerable to robbers, especially in times of economic decline. Grave robbing was so rampant that later dynasties had to relocate royal mummies to hidden caches. Many were found stripped, broken, or burned. And what if the successor hated him? Names were chiseled out, statues were smashed, legacy could be rewritten. In a world where memory equaled immortality, a defaced tomb was eternal death. Pharaohs' curses real and imagined, some pharaohs became infamous for their curses. Tomb inscriptions warned of divine wrath for those who disturbed the dead. These curses weren't always supernatural. They were psychological deterrents backed by religious fear, but curses were just the beginning. Some rulers were remembered more for the chaos they left behind. Akhenaten, for example, upended Egyptian religion and left the empire spiritually fragmented. He erased centuries of tradition, built a city from scratch, and forced worship of a single god only to have his legacy erased. Others died mysteriously, like Tutankhamun, who likely suffered from genetic illness due to royal inbreeding and was buried hastily. His tiny tomb and fragile body are sobering reminders that pharaohs were not invincible. The shadow of history, for all their power, few pharaohs are remembered kindly. The gods they worshipped fell into obscurity. The language they spoke disappeared. Their monuments were buried in sand. The average Egyptian peasant might have prayed fervently for their pharaoh during life, but within a few generations, most names were forgotten. Only the grandest monuments preserved memory. Modern archaeologists see them more as tragic figures than divine rulers, people crushed under expectations, propaganda, and the weight of a collapsing world order. What we recover from their tombs is not grandeur, but vulnerability, broken bones, rushed burials, damaged inscriptions, and frantic prayers for peace in the afterlife. Conclusion: a golden prison. To the outsider, it seemed like paradise. Golden jewelry, servants, temples, and the power to command armies. But behind the gold mask of Tutankhamun lies a broken skull, a clubfoot, and a rushed burial. The truth is simple. Being a pharaoh meant being god, king, and slave all at once. You ruled everything, but you owned nothing of yourself. You were history's most gilded prisoner, and that ... is why it sucked to be an Egyptian pharaoh. The final flame of the Viking Age, in the twilight of the Viking Age, when the longships still sailed. But Europe had begun to stiffen into kingdoms and churches. One figure towered above the fading northern horizon, Harald Hardrada, a warrior, an exile, a mercenary, a Byzantine general, and finally, a king of Norway. Harald Sigurdsson was the last thunderclap before the silence. His life, marked by war, wandering, ambition, and a dramatic death at Stamford Bridge, would come to symbolize the final breath of Norse imperial dreams. His saga is one of strength, hardship, and relentless drive, a tale that spans from the frozen fjords of Norway to the golden palaces of Byzantium, from the battlefields of Europe to the blood-soaked bridge that marked his end. This is the life of Harald Hardrada, the last great Viking king. Born into chaos, Harald Sigurdsson was born around 1015 into a noble family of western Norway in the region of Ringerike. His half-brother Olaf Haraldsson had seized the throne of Norway and was now facing stiff resistance from powerful earls and Danish overlords. From the start, Harald's life was shaped by political instability and the ambitions of warriors. At the age of 15, Harald entered the stage of history with sword in hand. He fought beside his brother Olaf at the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030, a fateful confrontation between the old and new orders of Norway. Olaf sought to restore Christian rule, but the coalition of Norwegian chieftains opposed him. The battle was fierce, a chaotic clash of armored men, and Harald, still a teenager, was wounded. Olaf was killed in the battle, later canonized as Saint Olaf. Harald barely escaped with his life, carried from the field by loyal retainers. He fled eastward, wounded in body and spirit, beginning a long exile that would shape him into a hardened survivor. The Varangian years, Harald's journey, took him to Kiev and Rus, where Prince Yaroslav the Wise welcomed him into his court. But Harald's ambition stretched further. With a small band of loyal warriors, he traveled south to the Byzantine Empire, then the richest, most powerful state in Christendom. He joined the Varangian Guard, an elite unit of Norse and Rus warriors who served as the personal bodyguards of the emperor. These warriors were famed for their loyalty, ferocity, and towering stature. Harald quickly rose through the ranks, distinguished by his discipline, cunning, and martial prowess. His exploits were legendary. He fought in campaigns across the Mediterranean, including in Sicily, North Africa, and the Levant. He helped suppress revolts, captured fortresses, and navigated court intrigues. In Jerusalem, he reportedly helped protect Christian pilgrims, earning both gold and honor. Harald amassed a fortune during these years. Byzantine sources called him Aralds. He sent treasures home to Norway and composed poetry in the Old Norse style. Yet the court of Constantinople was a dangerous place, full of plots and deadly rivalries. After a dispute with Empress Zoe, or perhaps the new emperor, Harald left Byzantium, possibly after being imprisoned and escaping. By 1044, Harald returned to Kiev and Rus with his wealth and married Elisif, daughter of Prince Yaroslav. He was now a warrior of experience, wealthy and connected. His eyes turned once more toward Norway. Return and rivalry in Norway had changed during Harald's absence. Magnus the Good, son of Saint Olaf, now ruled. Magnus was young, popular, and supported by Denmark. But Harald, confident in his claim and backed by his wealth and military record, sought to challenge him. Rather than plunge Norway into civil war, Harald offered Magnus a deal, half of his wealth in exchange for co-rule. Magnus accepted, and in 1046, Harald became co-king of Norway. It was a tense partnership. The two kings rarely appeared together, and their supporters remained wary. In 1047, Magnus died suddenly. Some say it was illness, others whisper foul play. Harald became the sole ruler of Norway. He was no longer a wandering exile. Now he wore the crown, and he would wear it with a hard hand. The king in his kingdom. Harald's reign was marked by fierce authority. He moved swiftly to assert control, crushing rebellion and centralizing power. Norway had long been a loose collection of earldoms and districts. Harald aimed to forge a unified kingdom. He imposed taxes to support a standing army and navy. He minted coins, standardized law, and encouraged trade. Yet he ruled with a heavy hand, earning him the nickname Hardrada, or Hard Ruler. His justice was often brutal, and dissenters were exiled, mutilated, or executed. He patronized skalds, the Norse poets, and sponsored the building of churches. Though a Christian king, he retained the warrior ethos of the Old Norse kings. He was respected but feared. Each year, Harald launched naval raids on Denmark, seeking to reclaim it. He burned villages, captured prisoners, and spread terror. But despite his military strength, he could not dislodge King Sweyn Estridsson from the Danish throne. These campaigns strained his resources and taxed his people. Norway remained independent but restless. Harald's eye turned elsewhere for glory. The final campaign in 1066, the English throne was left vacant by the death of Edward the Confessor. Several claimants emerged, including Harold Godwinson, William of Normandy, and Harold Hardrada. Harold's claim was tenuous, based on an agreement between King Harthacnut of England and Magnus the Good, but he saw an opportunity. He allied with Tostig Godwinson, Harold's exiled brother, and prepared an invasion. In September 1066, Harold sailed to England with around 300 ships and 10,000 men. He landed near York and won a resounding victory at the Battle of Fulford, defeating local forces under Earls Edwin and Mercar. He demanded hostages from the city and waited. But on September 25th, Harold Godwinson marched north with surprising speed and caught Harold unprepared at Stamford Bridge. Despite their fatigue, Harold's men fought bravely. Legend says he fought with no armor, wielding a massive two-handed sword, striking down dozens before being felled by an arrow to the throat. Harold's army was destroyed. Of the 300 ships, only 24 returned to Norway. His death marked the end of Viking military ambitions in England. Conclusion: The Last Viking. Harald Hardrada's life reads like a saga filled with blood and glory, loss and ambition. From a wounded boy at Stiklestad to a general in Byzantium, from a hard king in Norway to a fallen hero on English soil, he lived the last great adventure of the Viking Age. His death at Stamford Bridge marked more than the end of his life. It was the symbolic end of the era of Viking expansion. Within weeks, William of Normandy would defeat Harold Godwinson at Hastings, ushering in a new age of kingship, feudalism, and European statecraft. But Harold's legend lived on in Norse poetry and Icelandic sagas, and in the hearts of those who still yearned for the freedom of the seas and the roar of battle. He was a king, a soldier, a poet, and a symbol, the last great Viking king. Harald Hardrada, a farewell on the fjords. Close your eyes and picture the fading twilight over a quiet northern fjord. The air is still. Only the hushed rustle of pine needles and the distant call of gulls break the silence. At the water's edge, a long ship rests, solemn and grand, its hull weathered by countless journeys across rough seas. But now, all the noise of life has fallen away, replaced by ritual and remembrance. The body is cleansed with seawater and herbs, anointed with oils and wrapped in linen. This night, he becomes part of the great saga. The final chapter is written not in words, but in wind, wave, and earth. A crowd has gathered, robed in dark wool, lit by the flicker of torches. Some bow their heads, others whisper ancient prayers. A beloved elder has passed. The longhouse stands open, smoke curling from the hearth, and within lies the one they honor. In the longhouse, where firelight dances on carved beams, the body is dressed. Each item placed upon him tells a story. Over it, a cloak fastened with a bronze brooch shaped like a coiled serpent. Upon his hands, silver rings engraved with his clan's symbol. All around him are tokens of both war and peace. His body is lowered gently onto a bed of woven wool within the ship. Here, wrapped in silence, he awaits the rising wind. The sails are furled, not for battle, but for peace. Animal heads are carved at prow and stern, watching over the slumbering soul like guardians. His boots, worn from travel, are polished clean. It is not only a death, it is a transformation, a passage. A small pouch hangs from his belt, filled with coins for the toll to the underworld, if such a toll is needed. A shield rests by his side, its rim marked by years of defense. Both have grown old beside the man they now accompany. They are thanked, then offered to join him. Their sacrifice is made with reverence. Horn cups, carved bone combs, whetstones, and pendants fill the spaces around him. The villagers speak softly of his life, his voyages across cold waters, battles fought with axe and shield, markets visited in foreign lands. Choosing the ship for the dead, they climb aboard not with fear, but with understanding. Children watch in awe. Elders whisper tales of past voyages. As the keel touches earth, the transformation begins from vessel of war and trade to sacred cradle of eternity. Earth is poured over the hull, then stones. A mound rises, shaped like a sleeping whale. Depending on the custom, the ship may be placed atop a pyre or into a mound. If by fire, kindling is tucked beneath it, soaked in oil and pine resin. A single torch is lit, its flame small but fierce. Its curved bow reached skyward like the prow of a celestial beast, its stern cut through water and time. It represented movement between the realms, Midgard, Asgard, Helheim. Discovered in the 1800s, it had lain hidden beneath a burial mound for nearly 1,000 years. Sparks drift upward like fireflies. Some weep, others sing. Even after centuries underground, the ship looked ready to sail. Within, a man was found, broad-shouldered, powerful, likely a king. But if you listen closely, you might still hear the creak of its frame, dreaming of distant waters. His body had long decayed, but the treasures remained. Ornate sledges, game boards, shields, and beds. In the Viking world, not every soul departed with a ship. The ship itself was a marvel, its prow carved into dragon spirals, its deck adorned with painted wood. This rite was sacred, reserved for the great, those whose names were etched in memory, whose deeds echoed through generations. The ship, now fully loaded, sits as a cosmic cradle, ready to carry its passenger across an invisible ocean. The sail unfurls one last time. And though the body sleeps in wood or ash, the spirit sails onward. The ship was not merely a vessel. It was an extension of the self, a home, a chariot, a guardian, or to Folkvanger, Freya's meadow of peace and beauty. Some drift to Hel, the quiet realm of rest. The soul sailed beneath auroras, past the roots of Yggdrasil, through fog and starlight. The chosen ship stands tall, its figurehead rising like a sentinel. One was older, her face etched with time. The other was younger, her story untold. Together they lay in a chamber rich with artifacts, carved slaves, tapestries, tools, and ceremonial wands. Wooden chests are opened, revealing fine cloaks, furs, and iron weapons. These are not symbols of power, but items of need for the afterlife. The ship waits, empty for now, but not for long. This one had crossed storm-filled seas, outrun foes, and borne cargo from distant lands. Now, it will make one final journey. Villagers heave it ashore with ropes and song, pulling it inch by inch up from the sea. It groans and creaks, as if protesting the stillness. Around it, men and women build a platform. Runes are etched into the planks, incense rises. Dressing the dead in glory, now comes the preparation of the one who will sail beyond the veil. A woolen tunic, dyed deep blue the color of midnight waters. At his hip lies his sword. Its blade is nicked, its leather hilt worn, but it has served him faithfully. By his side, a wooden lyre, once played by firelight. A drinking horn, its rim gilded. The ship as a cosmic symbol to the Vikings, the ship was more than a tool. It was a sacred shape, echoing the arc of the heavens. Runes are inscribed on its timbers, for strength, for guidance, for safe passage. By torchlight, the villagers gather around the ship. A priestess recites a chant in Old Norse, invoking Gerd of the sea and Phrygia of the fields. Above, the stars begin to emerge bright, unwavering. They seem to blink approval, marking the beginning of the soul's voyage. Buried with treasures and servants into the ship, offerings are brought, tokens of memory, tools for the journey. A sword lies across his knees, polished by his son's hand. Then come the animals. A mare, calm and still, is led to the ship. A loyal hound follows. In rare cases, servants or companions may be chosen to follow, bound not by command, but by honor. Their eyes are serene. Everything is placed with care. Nothing is rushed. The ship fills, not with wealth, but with love. Rituals of fire and earth, a final moment nears. A hush falls over the gathering. The torchbearer steps forward and touches flame to timber. Slowly, fire climbs the hull, crackling and glowing. Shadows leap and dance. If the ship is to be buried, a trench has been carved from the earth. The ship is lowered into it carefully. All around, voices sing an old song, one sung for generations, a song of goodbye, a song of return. Women of the ship graves, not all ship burials were for warriors. Some of the grandest were for women powerful, respected, enigmatic. One of the most famous is the Oseberg burial. There, beneath a grassy hill in Norway, archaeologists uncovered a ship containing 2 women. They may have been priestesses, queens, or seeresses. Their grave tells a tale of influence and wisdom. To this day, their names are unknown, yet their presence remains. The silence around them speaks louder than words. The ship in the mound in southern Norway, near the edge of a meadow, rests the Gokstad ship. Its timbers were preserved by clay and peat. Archaeologists marveled at its design: flexible ribs, overlapping planks, a perfect balance of strength and grace. The site is quiet, grass waves in the wind. The ship sleeps beneath a wooden roof now in a museum. The afterlife voyage? To the Vikings, death was not a vanishing. It was a voyage. The soul may journey to Valhalla, where mead flows freely and warriors train for Ragnarok. Each afterlife had its own seas. And so the ship, heavy with memory, sets sail. The wind rises gently as if summoned. Legacy beneath the soil. Even now, centuries later, Viking ship burials hold their power. Beneath fields, forests, and fjords, they lie hidden, silent, sacred, from Oseberg to Gokstad. They remind us of how deeply the Norse revered life and honored its end. Each ship is a time capsule, a shrine, a poem written in wood and earth. And as your breathing slows and your thoughts drift like sails on the sea, imagine lying in that ship ... the stars above, the water beneath ... the world fading into dream. The voyage is not over, it simply changes course. Sleep well, traveler, and safe passage to the shore beyond the night. A time where love was a sacred game, governed by honor and yearning, and knights bowed not only to kings, but to love itself. Imagine yourself walking slowly through soft, dewy grass toward a quiet castle, its stone towers tinged with gold from the last light of the setting sun. A fire burns low in a massive hearth, and next to it sits a harpist, slowly strumming the strings. A place where time has no grip, and where every corner holds the weight of 1,000 whispered affections. Here, the age of chivalry still lives. His tune is soft, steady, almost like breathing. You gaze through the tall stained glass windows as its silver light washes the fields and towers. You walk its halls, wear its silks, and speak its language, not with words, but with glances and dreams. Somewhere in the gardens below, roses bloom even in the cool night. Somewhere, a lover waits. His hands are calloused from the hilt of a sword, and the leather of his gloves is darkened by sweat and rain. But his soul, his soul is soft. And when you are ready, we shall journey further into the heart of a knight who loved not with sword, but with soul. You sit near the fire, the warmth touching your cheeks, and you feel your breath slow. First the helm, then the mail, until he stands in silence, the firelight casting gold across his face. He sits alone, tracing the edge of a ribbon she once gave him. A token, a promise. The air carries the scent of blooming roses and cool earth. He dreams of holding her hand for a single breath longer than custom allows. Of a life where the rules of rank and duty fall away, and only heart remains. In the distance, the low murmur of lutes and harps beckons. This is no ordinary evening. And should he fall in battle, it will be with her name upon his lips, not as a cry, but as a lullaby. Feel the warmth of his quiet devotion wrap around you like a velvet cloak. For even the strongest of warriors carries within him a soft, steady love, a gentle heart, loyal to one. Let your eyes close gently. Lines that speak of the rose she dropped in passing, of the lace at her sleeve, of the way her voice caught the wind like music. And he hides them beneath stones, in the hollow of trees, and places only love would know to look. You have stepped into a time of velvet cloaks and whispered vows, of silent glances and secret poetry. The lady he serves, the one whose colors he wears knotted at his shoulder, is the sun of his world. He does not seek to possess her, no. He seeks only to honor her. But every swing is for her. Every blow he blocks, every lance he braces, every bruise he hides, all for her name. To be worthy of the glance she once gave him from a balcony high above the tournament field. Inside, tapestries hang on stone walls, depicting hunts, feasts, and quiet embraces beneath the moonlight. The castle stands calm, its great gates open. You pass through archways cloaked in ivy and lanterns that flicker with beeswax light. You follow a corridor lined with polished stone. On the walls, torches flicker in iron sconces, casting shadows that sway like dancers. Above, a vaulted ceiling holds the hush of centuries. The deeper you walk, the quieter the world becomes. At last, you reach the great hall. Long tables rest empty, but the air holds the scent of wine and roasted herbs. This castle is more than stone and story, it is a dream, preserved in ivy and candlelight. Outside, the moon begins to rise. Tonight, you are not a visitor. You belong to the sage. Let your breath deepen. Let the quiet castle wrap around you. A knight's gentle heart. Now, let us follow the quiet footsteps of a knight, a man whose armor shines by day and whose heart sighs by moonlight. He is no stranger to war, this knight. He rides through glades and shadowed woods, past still lakes that mirror the heavens, always with one thought beneath his helm, her. Each morning, before his duties, he pens a line of verse, not for the world, only for her. He trains by day, his sword arcing through air that trembles with effort. At night, beneath the same stars she sleeps under, he removes his armor slowly, piece by piece. He dreams not of conquest, but of a whispered conversation beneath the boughs of an orchard. Though he rides for kings and pledges to princes, his truest vow is the one he made in silence, to serve her always. So rest now beside the fire where he dreams. Sleep as nights once did, with courage in your chest and longing in your breath.